The concentration span of a Kenyan is so small, it's like that of a child. And then the affinity to nonsense is so high. Like the only thing that keeps you on TikTok is a dance, is a gossip, is a sex video. People need to hunger and thirst for information. So now our cows are fatting too much and our goats. Yes, imagine it. You will laugh, but that's actually it. That's what they are saying. Our animals are fatting too much, and we need to reduce them a thing. They have clauses whereby if your land remains fallow, like you ujalima hiyo shamba for 15 years or so, the government can actually repossess your land from you, in the guise that you are not productively using that land. And you can see the script, the corona script, is actually coming, is like the animal script right now. Like vaccinate. That was the same script, just that this one is now on the animals. So you cannot farm, you cannot engage in any agricultural activity if you're not registered. That's why they're calling it the Agricultural Professionals Bill. So your grandmother, 86, in the village, cannot plant her cassava or her sweet potatoes unless she's registered in the authority. So essentially, when they vaccinate animals, they've messed the meat we consume, they messed the milk. You can imagine all the milk we consume every single day will be mRNA infested. That's what they're doing. So hata kama ulijikinga kabisa out of the vaccines, kwa chakula wanakuchapa dose.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Organic Guy podcast. I'm your host, the Organic Guy, and around here we have conversation around how we can make our food system really work for us rather than against us. And today I think we're going to have a conversation that is very timely because we have been seeing what's been happening, especially in our parliament. Our members of parliament have been pushing bills, especially in the agricultural space. And today I think we have a really good guest who is going to help us really understand what's behind these bills and help us understand what these bills mean in the larger context of our agricultural space. Remember, agriculture is a very important part of who we are. Your parents are probably farmers, you were raised in an agricultural background, so this is a very timely conversation, and she goes by the name of Mary Kathomi. So Mary, welcome to the pod.
Thank you, Brian.
I must, I think, start with the good news we saw the other day, and that is the Senator for Busia, Honorable Kilimo Cha Haki, named you as the chairman of his exploratory team. So I'm guessing that's big news.
I was also shocked, but we identify with him even as on the journey that we do. Food protection, food sovereignty, food security. We identify a lot with him, protection of the Constitution. So yes, I'm up for the task to make it happen.
Yeah, looking at your track record, I guess it was the right pick, and it gives me a little bit of hope. So imagine if he could actually win. So that means we could get someone like you.
We fix agriculture, yeah.
So yeah, really looking forward to that. Yeah. And I think a lot of Kenyans really sort of relate with Okia, what has done in our Kenyan, especially in the justice system. He's gone to court really fighting for the people. So I think it's time as the people give him a chance to lead us. So looking forward to that journey. And for guys who have not had you before and this is the first time seeing you, so give them a little bit of background, like who you are, where you grew up, and like what's your personality like.
Mary Kathomi is my name. I'm born, raised in the village. Like many people don't think I'm from the village, but I'm entirely from the village, the Tharaka County. But when I was growing up, it was just the larger Meru. But now we have the Meru County, but I come from the Tharaka County. Mara constituency, Mudambe ward, and our village is called Rwanderi village. I walked to school, no shoes, so I'm a village girl, like literally. And I call myself, I'm from the slopes of Mount Kenya, because when you woke up in the morning, the mountain is so near Chogoria. Like if you want, the best route actually to Mount Kenya is the Chogoria route. And that's just home, So we saw the snow, when it's the sunrise. Such a beautiful look in the morning. So I've grown up in the village. I've gone to the farm. I didn't like it. You cry, but your mother has told you you have to do this. Umekatiwa section yako, you have to do it. That's how we grew up in the village. And I'm happy about, I think there are very few people who have the privilege nowadays of growing in the village. It's so beautiful, I think. It's so real. It's very different from what we have nowadays. And a lot of who I am stems from that upbringing. So I've just gone to a government school, a primary school. Nimekunywa maziwa ya Nyayo. Don't ask me about my ears. So, in my primary school, Moi was the president, and I just remember about the gabions and soil erosion. It was so big with Moi, soil erosion. There's a lot about Moi and agriculture, and I identify a lot with agriculture. Went to high school, still in Meru. So I think by the time I come to Nairobi, and everyone cleared high school, then we come to Nairobi to look for jobs. I came to Nairobi as I was not 18 yet, but I was after high school. So my formative years are well grounded in the village. I fetched water in the river. We didn't have piped water. We've taken coffee to the coffee factory on our backs with gunias, and that's just my life. It's just simple village life, and I am very proud of that life. It really makes you a strong and a grounded human being.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I can attest to that. So when people talk about usiguze mrima, you really, really understand what they're talking about.
It's so home. Mount Kenya is just home. You can actually walk to the mountain. It's home. So yes, Mrima is very personal to us. Yeah,
that's nice. I mean, you are very outspoken, and you've been outspoken especially in the areas of agricultural bills. I saw most of your content on TikTok, so you've been educating people on what's been happening in that space. So I want to know what was the moment for you, and you were like, what, I should start talk about these bills and what's happening. What was the trigger for you?
I am a very good researcher, and I do a lot of research, and I have information, and sometimes I feel like I'm in my own space. And it started in 2019, the COVID time, coming to 2020 with the lockdowns and the cessations, and nothing used to make sense. I think I am I don't know how to describe myself. I'm very intuitive. I also do a lot of research, and I question things, and I'm very comfortable in being branded the opposite. So I remember I'm the first person who bought a box of masks. Zilas are 3,000. Even when COVID had not hit in Kenya, I had masks in my house, just in case, just protection. But then everything unfolding around COVID, it threw me in a point of I really need to research what was happening. I remember taking a matatu, and I was even afraid of holding, the tumors, because then you're going to get infected. You just want to sit in a mat like this. You don't want to talk to someone. And then when I got into town, and I'm looking, the chokoras are not dying. They have no mask. And then the next week, people are throwing their masks all over. Then I'm like, no, this thing doesn't make sense. So that made me want to research more and more and more and more. And according to me, Corona was pandemic. It was very scripted. So it was so planned, and it didn't look real. So I went into a lot of research on that. I was very big on Facebook. I was an influencer on Facebook. And I think I did a lot of love. I just wanted to inform people. I wanted to save my friends. Even before the vaccines were rolled out, I was busy telling people, this thing, its intention is to bring a vaccine. Please don't take it. Please don't take it. And I was every month, every week, I was on, they used to call it what I was banned on Facebook. So I used to be in jail for a week, jail for a month, jail for 2 months. The way they say you can't post anything, but you can just read. That was my life. And I had a very big account, because I'd used my account for politics a lot, because I've been in very political spaces. And I one day, and of course now as Corona is growing in terms of things are progressing, and we used to have the cessations, you remember? You can't go to, say, Thika, past Thika, you can't go to Kisumu. And I just wanted to help people. So I'd post a video of, oh guys, if you do garlic and honey and lemon, that works. That heals corona. Or if that doesn't work, can you steam? And I would show people videos of how you put eucalyptus oil in water. And my videos used to get like branded misinformation. It was like, how do you call this thing misinformation? So actually that was like, it clicked me to want to know more and more and more. I would say corona was such an eye-opener in a lot of things. And the way Africa was segregated. There were vaccines for Africa. There were vaccines for other places. But I think for me, it was just trying to save people. It's just trying to save my friends. Let me even start with my friends. But it's my friends who branded me even more. At now you're a conspiracy theorist. And I would tell him, it's okay, fine. I'm a conspiracy theorist. But you know what? Usikimbilie, take your time. And I remember even calling people personally, Umenda. Like I'm trying to hold them. And I have even relatives who tell me, you now, what's wrong with you? And I remember the first tent to give COVID vaccines was in State House. So there's a friend of mine who got, actually a family friend, walipata appointment ati yangu mpaka naenda kuchukulia State House. I'm like, wait. Vitu za gava, just go slow, be the last, don't rush. And that threw me to a lot of research. And man, when you start researching, the things you learn. So I would say COVID, the corona itself, was actually the point at which I really dived into a lot of research.
It's really interesting you mentioned that was the start of your research journey. So, of course, we've been witnessing what's been happening in our parliament in terms of members of parliament bringing in a lot of bills. So I think right now about 9 bills now in parliament. So what I want you to do is just help us understand some of these bills.
Maybe I'll just pull it back a bit because I know these bills, people do not know, but they're really connected with the GMO. Let me just pick it up from the GMO point of view. When our government, the current government, came into office, they lifted the ban on GMO in a cabinet sitting. I remember it was the 13th of October 2022. So immediately the government was sworn in August, so September, October. Yani a month, they lifted the ban on GMO. There was no public participation on that. There was no input of any committee. There was no parliament. There was nothing, The ban was just lifted. And many people didn't give a thought to it because it was not brought into the public. And of course, Kenyans, we made noise in churches, in barrios, in social places. You know what? Ni sawa tu. Because sometimes Kenyans feel helpless. But the truth is we are not helpless. So the ban was lifted. And I remember the cabinet secretary, I don't know, the CS, Moses Kuria, I don't know, was he in agriculture? I can't remember his trade. And he said in a public meeting, there are very many ways to kill Kenyans, and this is just one of them. And what walipiga kelele, this guy doesn't know how to talk. But for me, I didn't see a guy who doesn't know how to talk. I just saw a wise guy who is actually trying to give information indirectly. Maybe because I think their hands were tied. This is a foreign-driven agenda, and this government is just implementing a foreign-driven agenda. So, fast forward 2023, 2024, 2023, a lot of agriculture bills have come to Parliament. You talked about the Livestock Professionals Bill. It's crazy. It's crazy what this bill seeks to do. This bill seeks to register any farmer who has an animal, a domestic animal. Call it a goat, a cow, a donkey, you must register. So it's establishing a board, sort of, where farmers need to register their animals, which will scare you. And they are even, after registration, if you have a bull, or let's say a male dog, a male donkey that is going to serve, you need to register that, as a seed. It's crazy what these bills seek to do. And there are penalties in these, assuming you're caught by the government officials having animals and you didn't register them, there are penalties. There are jail terms. The highest of those jail terms, which crosses on all these bills, was 2 years in jail. Yes. If you're caught, say, keeping a cow that you didn't register. There is also fines. The highest of them I've seen in those bills is $500,000. So you see, there's a registration board established, and there is a mandatory registration, and there's a penalty if you don't register. So look at that scenario, and that traverses on all the bills. They talk about registering, like a bull seed, the sources of seed, like a bull. So unaenda unaandikisha ng'ombe yako the gene, and it's going to serve, it's crazy, these things that they're doing. We don't even have structures to do those things. And when we talk about the Livestock Professionals Bill, that even talks about branding. They're talking about an animal branding. I'm a dairy farmer myself. I keep cows for milk, own home consumption, and for sale. So when we brand our cows, we just give them names. You can call your cow Michelle. If you're fancy, you're like, you want to make them look good, you brand them on the ears with a tag. You can put the name on the tag. That's what we've known as branding for animals, because you want to identify your animals. If you go to the Maasai land, they put, those bells on the neck. That's a form of branding of animals. We have our own way of identifying our animals. But the government now, through these bills, is seeking an invasive branding. Like chipping. They want you to chip your animal. You get? And you're not the source of the chip. So such that the cow is conveying data, biological data to some other sources, to some other entities, like some people are downloading that information. So that is the kind of branding these bills are talking about. It's really crazy. What these people want to do, it's insane. It's you don't even understand it. And they're taking all the powers. For example, now in the livestock professional bills, the power is taken and they're giving that power to the CS. So the power that was with, say, CARI or CARO, or, those agriculture agencies. So that power is being given to the cabinet secretary, an individual. So an individual is supposed to be making decisions regarding, say, dairy animals in Kenya. You see? And it's a very risky way of how they are trying to do these things. In those bills, by the way, those bills were so bad, Brian, I sit here and ask myself, do the members of parliament read them? Because on that livestock professionals bill, there was a clause whereby a farmer, as a dairy farmer, in dairy production, in farming, production is actually the most expensive, feeding your animal. So sometimes you bring maize germ from Uganda, you buy soya beans from the market, you buy omena, from Nyamakema. You come home and you mix a feed for your cows. You want good milk production. So we do those things just to increase milk production. If it's not that, we do hay. We take hay, we siaga, the way you grind. You also add napier grass. Sometimes you add maize stalk. Now, the livestock professionals bill is seeking a farmer to get permission to first of all register. Register your feeds. Like, I'll be mixing these portions and portions with the agricultural authority. Are you getting those things? So you can see the kind of clauses. Of course, they're huge documents. Some of them look fancy, look nice, but it's in the details. It's in the details. I've just picked the contentious clauses in, say, this particular bill.
Yeah. And as you said, it's really, you really wonder if this guy is actually reading these bills. And for me, the most erroneous thing about these bills is really trying to bring in foreign ideas to our local context. So the idea of trying to register every animal probably is a European idea, for example. That's something that is done in Europe or something that is done in the USA. So you can see that what these MPs are essentially doing is they are copy pasting those laws or those rules and those countries and then bringing into our local context, which really doesn't apply, right? Because majority of our actually producers are small scale, which I think it's our advantage. If you ask me, because now our food system is decentralized, so we have a lot more people producing.
Actually, on that point, our food production, 80% is by small-scale farmers. 80. So basically, the Kenyan population is fed by the small-scale farmer.
Yeah, I think members of parliament then should look at that and say, what is our strength? We have a lot more people involved in agriculture. How can we help them, right? Rather than restricting them with more bills and more laws for them to be able to practice our noble profession, right? So I think from that context, then you wonder what's happening in that particular space. The other bill that I think has been causing a lot of people to talk was the one with Ichungwa, which he claimed that he has withdrawn, but I saw an article somewhere in the Standard essentially highlighting all those clauses that were being talked about, and that is the land bill. So how do you understand it? Maybe you can lay it down for us.
What these bills are doing in Parliament, all the punitive bills that are in Parliament, their intention is to take away food production from the hands of the common Kenyan. Just take it away. Take it away, make farming so stressful, make farming so expensive, such that we abandon. So when we talk about the land bill, which Ichungwa brought to Parliament withdrawn, and now it's back tactically, it is to take away or control land as a factor of production. And if I discuss the land bill, I could also mention the water bill, which are the factors of production. So once you touch water, is a factor of production. You touch land, is a factor of production. You touch seed, is a factor of production. You've crippled food production in the country. So they have clauses whereby if your land remains fallow, like you ujalima hiyo shamba for 15 years or so, the government can actually repossess your land from you in the guise that you are not productively using that land. And there are also clauses whereby in the land bill, whereby they are putting lands in Kenya are freehold and leasehold. So even the lands that were freehold, the agricultural lands, the villages, they are classifying those areas. The way they say there's urban, there's a semi-urban area. They are bringing more and more masses of land into the urban classification so that they can collect leases on that. So what actually before we termed as agricultural land, now inawekwa urban areas or semi-urban. Okay? So let's say like in Nairobi or say Kiambu County. Kiambu, of course, is very metropolis. It's sort of like Nairobi. But now the people that are doing small-scale farming in Kiambu County, even those lands are being subjected to lease payments, which was not the case, And then you look at these people, then you wonder what. Okay, sometimes people ask me. I did an interview. People ask me, do they understand these clauses? Are you sure they don't understand? Because you do not understand how a Kenyan, not even a parliamentarian, would push such a clause to the masses. So they want, just to answer your question, Brian, they want to control land. Once they control land, once they've given government the leeway through these bills to take away land from people, what are they doing? They're dispossessing the masses of the biggest factor of production, which is land.
Yeah, because they are not making any more land.
You can't increase land. It's there. If you had 3 acres, unless you have the financial capacity of buying, that's the 3 acres you have. You see? So they want to take away, regulate and control land as a factor of production.
Yeah, which should be scary almost to everybody within the country, because now you are sort of literally taking away land from the people who you are supposed to empower to sort of produce food for you, and then putting it essentially into county governments and national governments, which we know are very terrible at handling resources. And you haven't even mentioned the story of how corruption is rampant. So if that land is dispossessed, it's not going to the government, it's actually going to an individual. So things actually get much, much messier if you start digging of what's actually happening in this space.
Have you heard a story of these urban lands that have leases of 99 years, Have you had, like, most of the time when those prime lands, when the leases are expiring, ishamulikwa. Many Indians have lost their lands like that. Like when that's like a 99 years, there's someone in Adi house. They've already taken the land. So imagine what they're trying to do to a Kenyan, who you didn't apply to be born a Kenyan. You're just a Kenyan because you found yourself here. You're an African. You found yourself in that home. So they're trying to make even the basic living, like it's a crime even to be alive, It is sad.
Yeah, really, really sad. So we've touched a little bit about the livestock bill, the land bill, and maybe you can also help us break down the horticulture crops bill, which was introduced by, I think, Honorable Sabina Chege. So what is it about?
I will go to the horticulture bill, but let me just tie it out with the water bill. I talked about the land bill. And then there's the water bill. The Water Amendment Bill 2023 is actually, the entire bill is actually an amendment bill. We have an existing Water Bill 2016, very noble bill, but now they introduce a whole clause on an amendment. And you know what that amendment is doing, Brian? They're introducing PPP, Public-Private Partnership on Water. The entire bill. It was being discussed in Senate the other day. So what they're doing, they're allowing investors to invest in water. So if now, like, I'm a trillionaire, I can do an application to the government and do a public-private partnership on Lake Victoria. See, it's a freshwater lake. So I can say I want to invest money on Lake Victoria. I want to harvest water. I want even to build a lake. Like, I can literally drain water. If I've given the government a good proposal of Lake Victoria, I can drain the water. Maybe develop another swamp out of Lake Victoria. Through a what? PPP. I can go to Mount Kenya. We have all the rivers that feed the Seven Fork Dam. I can tell the government I want to put a dam here. I can make a fancy document. Maybe I want to provide water to the population. I want to provide dams for irrigation, but on a public-private partnership. Don't forget, water is a right in our constitution. So it is the work of the government to provide clean water to the population for farming, for drinking. Yani, it's a right. So the failure of the government, now that the government has failed on making sure irrigation is working, water, provision of water to the population is working, they introduce a what? PPP. Total corruption. And then they also forget water is a natural resource. Can we do a PPP on a mountain, on Mount Kenya? That's a natural resource. So you cannot come and have a private partnership with the public on water. All the waters we have in Kenya are owned by the Kenyan. It's a sovereign, So you see the contradiction even with our Bill of Rights. So, and people, they come in a nice way and they say, like people in Kitengela, there is no water in Kitengela. People that's what the bill is talking about. They can sink boreholes and pipe water to the population. But ask yourself, for private people to come and sink boreholes and provide water to, say, for example, the Kitengela population, isn't it the failure of the county government? So, like, you're mitigating the failure of the government by introducing a public-private partnership. Let me go to the Horticulture bill by Sabina Chege. I think of all those, hakuna ile mzuri kwa hizo bills, but man, Brian, that one is vicious. You know what is horticulture? When you talk about tomatoes, when you talk about onions, when you talk about dania, when you talk about oranges, when you talk about lemons, I'm just giving examples. Every crop that is a short rain crop is an horticulture crop. Anything from 6 weeks, around 4 months, coming 3 months is an horticulture crop. Horticulture is all the vegetables we eat in our kitchen. The skuma, the spinach, the cabbage, the garlic, the ginger. Everything of that is classified in the horticulture. And don't forget, even in us people in the urban centers, all our kitchen gardens, what do they carry? Horticulture. You know, zile vitunguu za kuchuna, you've planted them in your backyard, horticulture. So Sabina Chege brings a bill in Parliament, and she calls it the Horticulture Crop Authority Bill 2024. And that bill seeks every farmer who is practicing horticulture, let's not even call them farmer, I don't even call them growers, because even many people doing horticulture, actually not even farmers, just people who plant to feed themselves. She says you need a NEMA certificate. The lowest, the cheapest NEMA certificate is 10,000 on a single crop. So if I'm going to do my onions, 10,000. I'm going to do my skuma, another 10,000. So I need certificates on all the horticultural crops I'm going to be growing. She doesn't even stop there. She continues and say, you will need soil testing. Okay? Every time I'm growing something, nabeba mchanga, napeleka soil testing. The cheapest soil test, I think, is 2,500. In that same bill, they talk about, and you know, they developed a document they were calling the KYS 98. That document talked about, actually that document was sort of the springboard of this bill, that the farmers are producing food in an hygienic ways. So this bill is supposed to come and mitigate and help farmers produce food in more hygienic ways. They even did a video of some farmers in, if you're going to Nakuru, in Kinangop, it's called Sokomjinga. Sokomjinga is one of the biggest markets as you're going towards Nakuru. And all that food in Sokomjinga comes to Nairobi. So all the lorries that pack foods, they pack in Sokomjinga. So you'll always find there carrots zinaoshwa, you know, they put in sacks. And they did a video and they showed how farmers in Sokomjinga were washing carrots in some muddy water. And you know, I laugh at these people. Where do carrots come from? From the soil. So when a carrot is coming from the soil, it's muddy. You're growing from the soil. So they say that was an hygienic way of producing food. So we need better ways of producing food. That is the document that informed this bill. And then they also mentioned that farmers are using excessive pesticides and herbicides. Then you ask yourself, how do the pesticides and herbicides get their way into the market? Is the Kenya Bureau of Standards that allows them? We have a whole agency under Ministry of Agriculture that regulates the chemicals, the fertilizers. So that agency has failed. Now they're punishing the farmer. So, of course, even as Kenyans, we must accept we have to change our morals in terms of food production. Capitalism has also caught up with people. You want more profits, more profits, more profits. So you want to make sure your crop looks so beautiful, unairusha kwa soko haraka, and then you pump in more pesticides. That is also a problem on us as farmers. You know, we've gotten into bad ways of food production. That's why we have, like in Kilimo Cha Haki, we say you produce it in God's way. Produce food in God's way of food production. So this bill that seeks to do how many licenses? NEMA certificate, soil certificate. There was a certificate there on pests, pesticides and herbicides and fungicides. So you need all those to do what? To be able to do horticulture, surely. And then the last one on that horticulture bill, how farmers are selling kwa soko. You see the way you go to the markets and you find farmers wametandika chakula kando ya barabara. That's unhygienic. Now we need a bill to make sure you're selling food in a hygienic way. Whose failure is it that farmers or traders are selling crops kando ya barabara? Whose failure is it? It's the county government. And don't be shocked, Brian, the county government officials tembea wakiokota inaitangwaje cess, wanalipisha na wanakupea receipt na unauza kando ya barabara. So why can't the county government establish good markets and make sure farmers are selling in the markets? So if the county government is unable to enforce a law, are we supposed to develop a bill to mitigate that failure? No, we are not. So that horticulture bill now captures all those things. Totally punitive, totally punitive. And one thing I have to mention, as Africans, we didn't grow our crops to sell. No. The 80% of small-scale farmers, of subsistence farmers in Kenya, they grow crops to feed their families. It's just the excess of it that you take to the markets. So they forget that we didn't do farming for sale. We did farming to feed our families.
Yeah, and I think actually that translates well to the another bill that I want us to talk a little bit about is the Agricultural Professionals Bill, which is essentially seeking to sort of criminalize our fathers and mothers who are literally farmers into doing their work. What's exactly in that bill?
You see, when you go through engineering school or you go through law school, you get your degree, you get to Kenya School of Law, then you graduate in the bar and you're an advocate of the High Court. You need to be registered at the LSK to be a lawyer. That's what they want to do with farming. Crazy. That's what they want to do with farming. So you can't practice. You can't be a farmer unless you're registered. This is so weird. So farming is going to be like this specialized profession. So you cannot farm. You cannot engage in any agricultural activity if you're not registered. That's why they're calling it the Agricultural Professionals Bill. So your grandmother, 86, in the village, cannot plant her cassava or her sweet potatoes unless she's registered in the authority. Actually, they've already established an authority. Yes. The authority that is supposed to register the farmers.
Really? It's already in action.
Actually, this is now they are doing the groundwork to make it effective. So farming is so diverse, Brian. Farming is so diverse. Like everyone is doing farming. When you walk along the road, these people who are selling trees, those are farmers. They propagate trees. Even the people selling flowers, they are farmers. These people forget that a human being and nature are supposed to exist symbiotically. Like we coexist. Yeah. So us as nature, we are one. That's why anyone, as learned as you may be, as moneyed as you may be, you want to even have flowers in your house. Okay, you want to plant something. So they want to regulate farming. Like I can't grow maize, I can't grow flowers, I can't, and all these things to register them. And let me pull you back a bit to connect the Agriculture Professionals Bill with an act of parliament ile ilipita. In the Uhuru administration, they passed a bill which is now an act, and they call the Seeds and Varieties Act. The Seeds and Varieties Act criminalizes sharing of seeds. You can't share seeds, okay? Of course, and we have many people in courts, we have organizations in court right now challenging that particular bill. And they say, Kenya is a signatory to this treaty. That's why we had to pass that bill. And that act of parliament right now, you're not allowed to share seeds with your neighbor. No, you're not. Like the way you have a bumper harvest, and the way we used to do it traditionally. When you have a bumper harvest, you take the best of the crop. And that is what you dry and store and propagate for the next season. And that's what you share. I remember people used to share. Even when you go to your neighbor, you say, nisaidie na ile mbegu kidogo. They will go to the granary, they'll get you the best quality. Now that is not allowed in Kenya right now. You see the people that sell even trees on the road, flowers, that's illegal. That's illegal as we are speaking. You're not supposed to propagate. If you propagate, that is meaning even cross, like the way you can take an orange and a lemon, do grafting, get a crossbreed of those two. You're not allowed to do that. If you do that, you're supposed to register every single line. So when we say they are literally criminalizing agriculture, that's what we mean. So like if you do agriculture the normal way we did it, it's actually a criminal offense. And let me also mention, in the Agriculture Professionals Bill, that is actually where we have a fine of $500,000 in that bill. Yes. If you're caught practicing any form of agriculture without being registered, that's where you're getting a fine of $500,000, and we have a jail term of 2 years in that particular bill. So essentially, sisi ni criminal.
Yeah, do they actually have the space? Does prisons have the space?
Yeah.
If we, all of us, decided, you know what, we're not getting all those certificates, I don't think they'll have enough space for all of us to fit in those jails. So I'm not sure if they actually thought through these bills or they just...
They don't read. Yeah. They don't even read them. Yeah. I can categorically tell you, these bills are foreign. They have no Kenyan spirit in them. You can see there is no Kenyan who was involved in drafting of these bills. So wanapewa 2 bills, they take them to parliament,
and then see how people react. So that leads us to what is the motivation then behind all these bills? What's the real motivation, do you think?
They say when someone wants to control you, they control your education, they control your health, they control your food, and they control your information. This is really a globalist, a new world order agenda that is being effected in Kenya. So they are seeking to control those 4 in the Kenyan population. And if you look carefully, in the African continent, we have Kenya on the east, South Africa on the south, Nigeria on the west, and Egypt on the sort of the north side of the African continent. These countries are very strategic in terms of how they're governed, form of government, and what is happening. The proponents of the New World Agenda have marked Kenya to be actually the pilot country, the pilot project for other African countries. So if these things we are talking about succeed in Kenya, they bankroll in Tanzania, they go to Rwanda. That's the intention. So what are they doing? They are taking over food production and food sovereignty. Brian connects very well. We are now legal in terms of GMO on one side. On the other side, sharing seeds is a criminal offense. And on the back here, you have a myriad of punitive bills in parliament, okay? You have bills touching on water, you have bills touching on land. What have you done? You've taken away food production from the hands of Kenyans, and you've safely put food production on the hands of the GMO makers. They are not Kenyans. They are not Kenyans. So the person who is the companies making the GMO seeds own the patents. They are not Kenyan companies. But that maize is going to be grown in Kenya. So the owner of that company controls the line of maize in this country. I saw Bill Gates talk about, I now have interest on millet, because he's the owner of all these things. He held this information is never hidden. It's out there. And he has now interest on millet, and he's taking millet to the labs to develop GMOs. And I forgot to mention, Brian, everything that is natural cannot be patented. Nothing can be patented is natural. The only thing that is patented is what they generate from the natural. So you can imagine if today you've given someone the authority to decide what you'll be eating for the rest of your life. Who are you? You're a slave. Like someone decides utakula ugali jioni, utakunywa maji. Someone makes that decision. They've taken away your God-given rights. And that's what the New World Agenda is doing. So they are literally taking over food production and food sovereignty. When you talk about food sovereignty, I tell people it is so sensitive. It is next to, I would call it, anyone touching food sovereignty of a country is committing treason in that country. because that is the security of a nation. That is the fabric of that country. So now you connect all these things and you see as a new world agenda being implemented in the country. And what does that mean? We don't no longer control our food. We no longer control our health. We no longer control our education. But I'm happy that we still control our information, because now we are having this conversation.
Actually, very, very important, because we saw what happens when a government decides, you know what, that conversation should not be had, especially during the time of COVID. People were being censored, others being purged over social media for just basically sharing information. So super, super glad that we can actually have this kind of conversations. And I think you've touched a little bit about GMOs. And as you said, this one of the first acts that this government did was allow GMOs to be imported into the country. And we know it was Kibaki who said no to GMOs. And it stayed so for up 10 years now. So for someone who doesn't know what's a GMO that we are talking about, can you sort of help us explain a little bit what is it?
What we have in terms of nature, we have indigenous seeds. This exists naturally, indigenous seeds. What GMO does, they pick, and many people do not understand the difference between an hybrid, a crossbreed, and GMO. If I take, for example, I take an orange stem and I propagate that, say with a lemon stem, I will get a crossbreed of orange and lemon. That's an hybrid. That's not a GMO. I'm just improving. I'm picking the best of one crop and another crop and just combining to get a superior. Hybrid is not GMO. GMO, they go back to the lab. They take the genome of a seed, like the atom, the smallest formation of that seed, and they change. So they change it in such a way they can tailor in a particular way. Because you see, you're changing the genome of that particular seed. For example, if it's maize, they can develop a maize that will grow, say, in 3 months or say in 2 months. They also tailor that seed in such a way that it cannot grow unless a particular pesticide is used on it. So in the lab, the makers of GMO make the decision of what they are making. That's what we call a GMO. They change the genome of that seed, which originally was an indigenous seed. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, and I think it's also important you mentioned like the difference between the two, because a hybrid, as you mentioned, it's between the same species, right? So you're not going outside the barriers. Yeah. So in this context, so let's say if you have two maize varieties, for example, one is short, one is tall, and you want one that is sort of in the medium, so you can crossbreed those two and then you can get it. So you're not crossing the species barrier, but for the GMOs, they're going outside the barriers.
When you mentioned that, I'll just give you an example. Someone brought me an orange at home. I think they couldn't eat oranges, so they packed the oranges and brought them at home. There's a big orange that was brought in my house. I'm very keen on what I eat. And this orange was abnormally big. So my daughter cut the orange, and then inside it was red. GMO. So this is actually a crossbreed of an orange and a melon. It is awful. It's big, it's this big. Ndani ni machungwa, yes, but it's red. It's actually in the market. It's in the supermarkets. Outside, it's a beautiful orange color. Pretty bigger than the normal orange. But inside is red. And then you keep quiet and ask yourself, and just even to further on that, on what you're saying. Let's take the examples of countries that have consumed GMOs. Let's talk about them. South Africa has consumed GMOs for a very long time. They did not consume GMOs. Food production in South Africa is actually controlled by the white settlers. Now, the white South Africans. You see, like the Del Monte farms, we don't have many here in Kenya. The Kakuzi farms, those are the big white-owned farms in Kenya. Now in South Africa, it's extreme. They literally own the country and they do extensive farming. That's why GMO in South Africa has been legal for a long time. I'm looking at countries like, let's talk about America, where they've consumed GMOs forever. everyone is stepping away from GMOs. Now, American scientists have science documents, science papers talking about the effects of GMO. Just to consolidate that conversation, Brian, GMO, it is proven. It's proven. Science papers are there. GMO, scientists can actually go to the lab, develop a seed that can attack a gender, can actually attack a race. The seed is genetically modified, for example, to attack a black male child. So, hata tukule sisi wengi, the effect is going to be on a black male child to develop a particular effect. That's how GMO is. It's engineered for a particular reason. Now, because as we are speaking right now, we have two varieties of GMO on sale in Kenya right now for planting. They're already in the market. I think they were released this month. We have two. We've been consuming a lot of maize GMOs in Kenya because our maize is actually imported. We don't have control of what is grown out there. So now they want us to actually grow it literally here. We have a couple of court cases that are going on around GMO. That is a matter of wait and see. South Africa has won their case against GMO. They actually won in the Supreme Court. Yeah. South Africans have battled that court case for a long time. And they've won and they've proved, the South Africans have been able to prove on health implications of GMO on the human body. Okay. So when we talked about food sovereignty, and now we are having a conversation about GMO. Now, can you see how one person sits and decides in a lab how they are going to modify seeds that are going to be consumed by a population? You see, GMO is their science documents. It's all over. Everyone knows the effect of GMO, the relationship of GMO and cancer and autism on children. This autism you're seeing on children, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease. You see all these they call lifestyle diseases. They have a very close correlation with GMO. The documents on cancer and GMO out there, you won't believe it. And those are the conversations we need to have. So, okay. We've allowed GMOs. Who owns these patents? That's the question. Who owns these patents? Which labs develop these patents? And I remember earlier there, Brian, you mentioned what is the justification of consumption of GMOs in Kenya? Our government says, and Minister of Agriculture says that we are food insecure. We cannot feed our population. So that's why we need better ways of food production. Part of those better ways of food production is changing our seeds. That is one of the better ways. And as an agriculturist myself, I ask myself, let's assume we are actually food insecure, which is a whole other conversation. I don't think we are food insecure, but let's assume we are food insecure. We want to sort the entire problem of food insecurity by changing seeds. Did we even have a conversation as a country, as the Minister of Agriculture? Did we even do data collection and talk to farmers and see what can be done in food production to improve food? I'll give you an example. Kitale is known to produce huge quantities of maize. A farmer in Kitale will use 4,000 shillings to produce one bag of maize, an average. So you know what our government officials do? The cartels, the corrupt. That maize, the farmers are supposed to produce and then they sell to NCPB. Because NCPB is the authority that protects or buffers the country against, say, the shortage of maize. What does our cartels and government officials do? They make sure they are giving the farmer a very bad price for the maize. So then you can imagine if I'm going to spend 4,000 to produce a bag of maize, at least buy my maize at least at 6,000. Hata nikule 2,000 per bag, you know. They give the farmer such a bad price. You know what they do behind the back? Of course, they'll come on media and they say, we have a shortage of maize, and we are giving what is it called, an import license. Biashara ndio inachapwa hapo. So someone is importing maize from Mexico. Do you know how much they're bringing a bag at? Maybe 4,000, 3,000. So where is the Kenyan farmer going to sell their maize? They're stuck with your maize. But they do not care. These people, the capital is going to maximize on profits. They don't care the quality of the maize coming from Mexico. You remember some years back, there was a whole ship of maize that was filled with aflatoxin. And the Kenya Bureau of Standards raised the flag, said, no, this maize can't be consumed in Kenya. Kidogo, that guy was sacked. And I understand he actually died a few, kidogo, akuishi sana. Now see our problems in agriculture. See the prices for food. See the cost, how high our cost of production is, Brian. It is so expensive to produce in Kenya. We can't even compare ourselves with Tanzania, for example. Tanzanians have subsidized their cost of production. There are no taxes on farming in Tanzania. Kutoka fertilizer, farm inputs, everything zero rated, no tax. A Kenyan, if you're going to grow onions in Kenya, let me tell you the price of a kg of Neptune seed in Kenya, 40,000, 1 kg. And on that 40,000, 25 is tax. 25 goes to the tax. Hata ukinunua tu pale kwa receipt unaona. So why tax farm inputs? Why tax fertilizer? In Kenya we have a culture of kila mtu kukula, tukenda kukula. They want to kula everywhere they can. So out of that kukula, what happens? Cost of production goes up. So I'm just trying to show you this conversation about that we are food insecure is a very dishonest conversation. It is just an excuse to allow GMOs, because nowadays you cannot rely on the rains entirely on agriculture. But ask yourself, Brian, what percentage of Kenyan land is under irrigation? Very small percentage. We have the Kimwarel Dam that never took off. We have the Earth River drain basin, which is perfect for irrigation. No irrigation happens there. We just have Mwea irrigation scheme. We have 1 or 2 irrigation schemes that are functioning in Kenya. And if you look back, isn't these 60s, 70s? Yeah. There's no new irrigation scheme that has been established in this country. So if you're not going to mitigate on rain, the shortage of rain, you're going to excessively tax a farmer. We have unfair competition in the market for food. Cost of production in Kenya becomes high. Other farmers can sell their produce in Kenya and make profits while the farmer can't make profits. What happens? The Kenyan farmer abandons farming. So when they abandon farming, the importer is very busy importing. Are you seeing? So the conversation around GMO being a modern way of food production is very dishonest conversation. It's a very dishonest conversation. So, and you see, this is a conversation we are having on the streets, like me and you right now having this conversation. And thank you very much for doing what you're doing. These voices are very important because we are saying things that many people are not going to say, And when we have this kind of conversation, we are trying to show these people, you're just being dishonest with yourselves. So the GMO is, let me tell you, it is going to dent our health. When COVID happened, they said Africans are going to be dying in the streets. They said we were going to be collecting body bags. I'm sure you saw those clips all over. Africans will be picked in body bags. They will be shock. The effect of COVID, of corona, let me call it of corona, were the lowest in the African continent. Worldwide, the effects were lowest on the African continent. Do you know why? Our food. Yes. Our food is, and when I have conversations with people, I tell people, food is not just for nutrition. Food is for medicine. So the kind of food you eat is medicine to your body. So because of that good food that we've been eating, we didn't really die as they wanted us to die. And now they've come for the food.
Yeah, and we actually have to be very aware on where they are taking us. And it's important you mentioned about the thing of South Africa and GMO. I think I was reading somewhere they have been growing GMO since 1997. And when it comes to hunger, 46% of their population is still in hunger. So when Bill Gates comes here and tells us, hey, if you grow more GMOs, you're going to reduce the incidence of hunger, it's a lie, right? The other thing they mention about is to reduce the amount of pesticides that are being used. In South Africa, since 2007 to 2012, 2007, they are using 12 million of glyphosate to spray their crops. By 2012, they were using 20 million. So an increase of 8 million more glyphosate that is being used on their crops. So the issue of we really want to reduce the number of pesticides that are being used is also false. So the issue of empowering farmers, majority of the farmers who took loans to actually buy the GMO seeds and plant them, almost all of them went bankrupt. So as you can see, there is a systematic, I think, misinformation from their part. They would like to label us a lot of being misinformed, but it's their misinformation that is actually leading to where we are right now. And I think we have to push back and say, hey, there's an alternative ways of growing your food, and this is what we've been doing. We've been in the planet for so long, and we'll be able to feed ourselves for all of this year. So it's time we look at this conversation and say there's another way that we can actually do these things. And it's a coincidence also, we saw the other day that the president now has another initiative as well, and he wants to vaccinate all our animals. I think he's targeting 22 million heads of animals to be vaccinated. It's very interesting, listens to him and the ministry in terms of justification of why we need to vaccinate all these animals. So what is your reading of this? I mean, what is the motivation behind this?
They say when you make a mistake, you're forgiven. But when you repeat a mistake, then you're foolish. I think we're all humans. We learn through the mistakes that we make. But it is very stupid to keep repeating a mistake. I will pull this conversation to the COVID vaccine. And I will tell you, worldwide right now, in Europe, in Netherlands, in Japan, it's been proven, not just proven, people have gone to court. They've proven COVID vaccine was actually not a vaccine. Pfizer has actually been sued for damages. People have been paid in America. People that lost their jobs have been paid. The FDA is now like the MOH of those countries, have been sued for people losing jobs. They've actually been sued for mandating masks. And what do they call it? You know, that the distance, the social distance, they've been sued for those things. So, and you can see the script, the corona script is actually coming, is like the animal script right now. You know, like vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate. That was the same script. Just that this one is now on the animals. They are not making sense, Brian. They're common sense, they are not making sense. So you want to vaccinate all. Okay, the president talks about, you'll pull videos even on YouTube. The president says we want to improve our meat quality. That's what he says for export. Do we even export our meat? What percentage of our meat do we export or consume locally? So he talks about improving our meat. Then when you listen to the CS, it's the CS of agriculture, a whole other different story. I think it's the PS of the CS who talked about foot and mouth. We are vaccinating against foot and mouth. Then when you talk to other agriculture officials, we are vaccinating, we are injecting, we need to reduce methane production in animals because methane is hazardous. Excessive methane is affecting the atmosphere. My goodness, the contradiction of their stories. So now our cows are fatting too much and our goats. Yes, imagine it. You will laugh, but that's actually it. That's what they are saying. Our animals are fatting too much, and we need to reduce the methane. That's the reason of it. And now the 22 million herds of cattle and sheep and goat and donkeys and camels need to be what? Vaccinated. Please, all the animals I've talked about are herbivorous animals. Their stomachs, they have the 4 chambers, they regurgitate, we did this in agriculture. The way they digest food, herbivores. Elephants do the same. Buffaloes do the same. Every herbivore in the wilderness do. So they need to tell us how they are going to vaccinate the elephants. They need to tell us that. Because even in the wilderness, they are producing methane. Sindio. Now they need to go to Masai Mara and deal with the buffaloes fast before coming to our homes. Let them vaccinate all the elephants and all the buffaloes. Wakimaliza sasa. And then maybe do even a study of, I don't know, a year or 2. These people are insane, Brian. But they are not. Evil has a way of coming, selling itself. These vaccines they're talking about, with a lot of contradictions of the reasons of it, I'll tell you the reason. They are injecting mRNA in the animals. That's actually what they're doing. You see, the mRNA that was in the COVID vaccine is actually in the COVID vaccine. It's the same they're injecting in the animals. mRNA doesn't die. It will go to the skin, it goes to the milk, it goes to the meat. So essentially, when they vaccinate animals, they've messed the meat we consume, they mess the milk. You can imagine all the milk we consume every single day will be mRNA infested. That's what they're doing. So hata kama ulijikinga kabisa out of the vaccines, kwa chakula wanakuchapa dose. But there's one thing I know, out of the studies that I have done, the most lethal, anything that comes into your body, the most lethal of it is what comes direct to your blood. Your stomach has a way of attacking anything that is coming to attack the body. So that's why walijua, when they brought the COVID vaccine, which I call it's a mRNA agent, they brought it direct to the blood, because anything that goes direct to the blood affects the body. But anything that goes through the stomach, inapatana na the acidity of the stomach, digestion, enzymes, there's a lot of dealing with those poisons. That's why a lot of poison, like, it's dealt with in the stomach before it goes to the bloodstream. So essentially, I'm trying to tell you, Brian, what they are doing on the animals, they are actually poisoning our food. And then Bill Gates comes and tells us, now we need to eat more insects for our protein. For our protein, now we need to go to insects. And let me tell you something. People are buying that story. Oh yeah, I don't deny. We used to eat termites. Even now, when it's raining, to takaranga zile termites, it's crunchy. We've done that. But now, they are saying now for a protein source, the meat, mnakwama kwa insects. Don't you, as human beings, I think we need to do better. As human beings, we need to say, no, this is too much. You know what? Pull back. We need to do better. That's the intention of these vaccines. So when I have an opportunity, I tell people, anything for free, anything you get for free from these governments, avoid. We are not anti-vaxxers, Brian. We are not anti-government. No, we are critical thinkers. If you're sick, you go to hospital. You don't bring me medicine in the office and I'm not sick and you tell me you need to vaccinate me in the office. So these free things, these freebies, they're actually not free. You are the price. You're actually the one paying for those things. They're never free. So I tell farmers, if your animals have a problem, I'm a farmer. We get mastitis when you're milking. We get rumpy skin on our cows. Pay a vet. Because you control what gets into your animals. Do not go for these free things because they are not even making sense. And I've seen out of a couple of videos we've done about of these vaccines, people are coming up with information. The labs are actually now in Kenya, but they're not Kenyan owned. These vaccines are being produced in Kenya, but we are not in control of production. It's not Kenyans doing these things. Okay? So, my goodness, it's someone asking you, I want to kill you. And then they give you the option of, how should I kill you? You see, when you find yourself in that situation, these people, they don't have our best interest at heart, at all. whichever way. So I think we need, as human beings, as Kenyans, we need to be wiser. We need to wake up. We need to say no to these things. So please don't vaccinate. Do not vaccinate your cows. Do not vaccinate your goats. Let's deal with the ones in the forest first if we have to.
Yeah. And actually that brings us to the question, why would you like to vaccinate all the animals? If indeed we had a problem with the foot and mouth disease, it's better if you go to those particular cows that are suffering from that disease and then vaccinate those ones.
And actually how outbreaks work, you see how outbreaks work? If you go to Kambani, it's a semi-arid. If you come to Kiambu, it's tropical, like the green area. If you go to Mount Kenya, Meru, Embu, different weather. Ukienda Mombasa, different weather. Outbreaks are the same. You can never have a foot and mouth outbreak in the entire country. It's not possible. They come in regions, because of weather patterns and the climatic conditions. So if you're going to have an outbreak of foot and mouth, say like in Kibwezi, haitafika Kiambu. By the time it's in Kiambu, it's maybe in another 2 years and different. So when you're saying you're going to vaccinate en masse, then you're not being honest. Yeah, you're actually insulting science.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then that also same applies to the idea, we want to improve the quality of meat we are importing. If that's the case, then put it as a zone where you actually specializing on growing those kind of seeds and then import this kind of.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. For the importers, vaccinate for the importers, because as we don't consume meat meant for export. We actually, all the meat that you're consuming, ng'ombe zinatoka hapa Kajiado, zingine zinatoka Garissa, mbuzi. Leave our food alone, because that's what they're trying. They just leave the food alone. That's our source of proteins, and it needs to be protected.
Last time I checked, no Kenyan actually complained about our meat maybe needs a little bit of more vaccination before we eat it. So I think they need to be honest and come out what is the reason behind this. And luckily we know the reason behind it, because Bill Gates is in the country. He has actually been given an immunity in Kenya, which raises a lot of alarms given that he's been indicted in the Netherlands for crimes against humanity. Yeah, so that alone gives you an idea of why this is happening, and we know his stand in this issue. He believes that cows are actually a problem in the climate change situation, and we need to deal with it. He's been actively actually investing in fake meat. So there are all those kind of dots really that are out here that you actually need to connect and see what actually is happening. And I think more people are getting to that point where they see, okay, yeah, we can actually connect these dots that you're talking about. We see similar instances in climate change now. Bill Gates is a huge proponent of climate. I think he wrote a book about climate and what needs to be done. I remember a long time ago, we used to talk about global warming, that the earth is heating up and we need to reduce the amount of heat we are producing. Nowadays the conversation is about climate change. We've seen a lot of our governments really putting more effort into climate change. We've seen a lot of solutions that are coming out, which frankly I don't understand, like carbon credit. So what do you think is the reason behind the push for climate change?
Human beings, we've taken ourselves to the level of demigods. Nature has a way of balancing itself without any intervention, without me or you intervening into nature. We were born into it and we will live it. And it balances itself very well. That's why we have the ocean, we have the mountains, we have the lakes, we have rainy seasons, we have dry seasons. The maker, in his blueprint, he laid a very good blueprint of nature. So in our own, I don't know what to call it, in our own madness, we want to control nature. Mary, I can tell you there's nothing like climate change. There's nothing like climate change. It's a making. It's a narrative that has been built to take away our rights as human beings. When they say climate change, of course it is the globe. Over the years, you read science papers, has changed in terms of temperature. There are points that the globe will be more warmer than others. The sea line tilts a bit towards land and back, Nothing to worry. This has happened over centuries of years backwards. And it is the world has a natural way of balancing itself. So now they come and say we have global warming, and part of that global warming, of course, it's industrialization. Africa contributes 3% of what they are calling the emissions. But funny enough, in those documents of global warming, whereby, of course, they've introduced the carbon credits, Africa is paying more in terms of mitigating for global warming. So now that's why we are having forests that are, there are carbon credits, like Kakamega Forest the other day, so was adopted by the First Lady in terms of carbon credits. So you can never touch that forest. Hata kuni huwezi toa hapo. I don't know, for a couple of years. This is slavery. Okay, we are still in neocolonialism, I accept, but this is another level of slavery. We are not as industrialized, but this story of carbon credits, we have UAE, the billionaires, the trillionaires, Arabs, the white people, they've bought all the land in Africa in the name of carbon credits. So if you ask me, this is a way of stealing African land, because other people cause the problem, we pay for it. You see? And we don't have a problem with being branded conspiracy theories, because most of the time we are proved right. Most of the time. Give them another 1 year, 2 years, those people are actually right. Yeah. It is a con. It has been coined. Global warming is a concept that has been coined very well by the New World Order proponents to control humanity. And up or to global warming, that's why we still have the story of methane emission. So that's why they are rolling the animal vaccine. In that same global warming narrative, they brought in the carbon credits to take over our forests, to take over our land. I'm not for it. I don't agree. Every concept of it, discuss it, and then it has a lot of money, my dear. Yeah. The amount of money that has been flooded in Africa right now, in terms of carbon credits, and unajua nakupenda pesa. We run there, all of us. We run there. Oh, I went to meetings the other day whereby they're even training people on how to do organic fertilizer, and then they actually have a way of calculating the carbon credits on that fertilizer. And I'm like, look at these people. Keep more cows, keep more goats, take that manure, sell to the farmer. I went to a farm the other day. It's actually a university, Muranga University. They have a farm. It's called Murira Farm in Muranga County. They're doing a brilliant job in agriculture. And they have demo farms. They've grown terere. One farm with fertilizer, like ile tunanunua kwa duka, another farm with manure, another farm with, like all forms of fertilizer. Like do that at demos. You should see like a small demo of manure, and which is actually goat droppings. You won't believe it. The crop is beautiful. You cannot compare those crops. And I personally live in Kiambu County. All my neighbors grow vegetables for farming. Actually, Kiambu County is feeding Nairobi in terms of vegetables. So I live in Kiambu County. And if you want your crops, your skuma, your terere to do well, weka dhumu. And the best is the goat droppings. Go to the Masai land with a lorry. Get all the manure that comes from the cows. That's the best for the farm. Keep a bit of your rabbits. Harvest rabbit urine. Rabbit urine is big business. Use that as manure. You see, now they tell us, oh my God, these people are psychos. I think they're psychos. They're not normal people. You pick things that have worked in the African setting. You pick things that have worked in agriculture. Then you tell us, by the way, I forgot to mention, did you know in one of those bills, the bills that we discussed, there was a clause in that bill, was it the Agriculture Professionals Bill? Manure was illegal. They actually sneaked it out. Oh, okay. They sneaked out there was actually a clause that the use of manure is illegal. Then they pulled that clause out. So the things that have worked for us, you just come and tell us, you know what? Those things no longer work. You pick what I am telling you. Nature, Brian, is very simple. We balance between the flora and the fauna. And there's such an awesome symbiotic relationship. It balances so well. Keep the animals, use the manure on the animals provide us with our proteins. Right now in the Kenya, you walk around this country, everyone wants organic food. That's big business right now. If I tell people, if right now you want to get into business, produce food organically, brand your business, brand your food properly. I didn't spray anything, I didn't use any chemicals, all what I used was manure. You're in business.
Yeah, and I think if you tie that into the bigger picture and what we've been talking about in terms of the registration that are being passed in Parliament to trying to stifle our farmers from owning land or making it difficult for them to practice agriculture. Reminds me of the quote, I think it was by Claude Shaw, the president of World Economic Forum, where he said, "You will own nothing and be happy." So if you tie all those things, then it actually starts to make sense on why he uttering such a kind of things. So I think it's up to us. There's a lot of information out there. It's up to us to actually go ahead and put this information into practice and really say, hey, we've seen this is what has happened, and this is the direction that we actually want to move. So we've talked a lot about these bills and what they're being introduced. I think most of the critics will look at this and say, we just want to streamline the way agriculture is done. We want to professionalize the agricultural industry. So from your point of view, what are some of the things that I think you can maybe recommend in terms of like positive things that we need to do for us to actually improve our agricultural system?
Let me tell you, Brian, I have this thing I want to say before I forget. I know your podcast is watched across the world, but I would really call upon Kenyans to stop being lazy. Kenyans are lazy when it comes to information. I don't think there's a Kenyan who is going to watch a video of 2 minutes and concentrate. 1 minute and they're looking for dances, they're looking for sex things. I think Kenyans need to stop being lazy and stop. The concentration span of a Kenyan is so small, it's like that of a child. And then the affinity to nonsense is so high. I really want, I'm seriously calling upon Kenyans to have an affinity and a desire for information. I don't know if it's our education system that programmed us to be stupid, because I think that's really stupid. Like the only thing that keeps you on TikTok is a dance, is a gossip, is a sex video. People need to hunger and thirst for information. If Brian puts out such a video for an hour, sit and watch and get information, because that information is going to help you. I will tell you, Brian, I'll talk about coffee, talk about tea. Those are cash crops that are big in Kenya. Kenya was the biggest exporter of coffee years back. 80% of the world market coffee came from Kenya. It died. Tea, we are doing way low. Do you know Sim came from Coast region? Do you know Sim was a big export in Kenya in the 70s? Oh, Sim was a big export. It was a raw material for oil. I'm sure, I don't know, maybe you guys here are pretty younger than me, but I remember you never went to a shop, kununua Sim. You know those surround things? It was in every shop. It was, the raw material of Sim was produced in Kenya, coming from Coast. Do you know Sim farming died in Kenya? I'm trying to show you our problems in agriculture. Kenya was known, Nakuru was known as the biggest producer of wool, ile ya sheep. Ile kampuni ilikuwa inaitwaje? Is it Livestock? Ninasahau. They used to buy wool. Everyone used to have sheep. Si anyama kunyoa. We used to produce wool to take to the factory for fabric. Now you've mentioned another one. Kenya was the number one producer. 70% provision of the world pyrethrum market was supported by this country. I'm mentioning to you cash crops that have died. What haven't I mentioned? Pyrethrum. Oh, Sizo. We were big in Sizo. Do you see these arid areas? The Ukambani, the Raka. We used, and you know Sizo, you do nothing. That thing just grows in wild. Unakuja tu unakata, unatoa zile maji, Kamba factory. We were biggest producers of Sizo. Where did those cash crops die? Why did they die? Those were the biggest sources of revenue, of foreign reserve in this country, job provision, income for farmers. How did they die? Do you know we had a Kenya Perethram board? Hizo vitu zilikufa. Even when you go to those buildings, hata zina mabati. It's horrible. So now I'm trying to show you what is our problems in agriculture. Our agriculture policies, I'm not even talking about this government. From the days of Kenyatta, our agricultural policies are misplaced. And they've been overtaken. Agriculture, let me tell you what happens in Kenya, Brian. Mali kuna kapesa cartel. Where there's money in Kenya, a cartel establishes itself. And there's a lot of money in agriculture. So what do? Cartels establish themselves. KPCU died of what? Because they stole from farmers everything. Cartels. There is another place there's a lot of money right now. Export market. If today I'm given the Ministry of Agriculture to run, the work would to break cartels. The export market, look at the bureaucracies around the export market. They say Kenyans can't produce good food. Oh, we don't want sprayed chemicals for export. Kenyans are very good producers. We are the best producers of avocados right now. But just look at the bureaucracy around the export. Export, because their license, export license ni pesa ngapi? 500,000. This license alone. Ujachota huku na huku. You'll need like 10 million to get an export license. How many farmers will do that? Few. So it's only the cartels that have the money that manage to get the export license. So what do? They exploit the farmer, but they make the profits. I was being told hiyo avocado, one avocado, the Hass avocado, inatoka kwa mkulima at 10 bob. When it gets to the airport, before ipande ndege, 80. By the time that avocado is getting to China, I think it's 200 or 301. Are you seeing that? So, what is our problem? Misplaced priorities. Every time I get an opportunity to talk, I tell people, do you know all the tomato sauce we consume in the supermarkets is synthetic? Hakuna nyanya hapo. Hakunanga nyanya. And do you know how we produce tomatoes in Kenya? Just imagine if you have a tomato factory in Kenya and we brand properly organic tomato sauce, organic tomato paste. All what we are eating in the supermarkets are chemicals. They are chemicals mixed to look like a tomato. So who is going to farm when a factory is producing synthetics? No wonder then we get sick after that. So I'm just trying to pinpoint to you the problems in agriculture. They are very simple, just that no one is willing to sort those problems. Kill the cartels in agriculture. This year, 2-3 months ago, bonus ya majani ilitoka. The entire country was demonstrating. Did you see that? Meru, Kericho, every farmer was on the road demonstrating. Kama Gen Z. Walikula pesa ya mkulima yote ya bonus. The bonus, they used to get 100 bob. 100 and something per kg. They got some farmers got 23, 53. You see what I'm talking about? Cut the taxes on agriculture. Stop taxing anything on agriculture. Zero. Kama ni seed, zero. Fertilizer, like, oh my God, the other day, I talked to, Russia even donated a whole melee of, I don't know how many metric tons of fertilizer, donated. Do you know that fertilizer was sold in Kenya? It was donated, but sold in Kenya. I think corruption, the love of money, people want to maximize in every little thing for their pocket. It will come to bite them one day. So, I'm looking like, our solutions are very simple. If we are genuine about our solutions. If today we did value addition, another problem in agriculture, the government doesn't invest in value addition. Ebuenda kwa soko, just check the wastage. We waste billions of farm produce. And if you turn that to billions, it's trillions of shillings that wasted. Imagine if we did value addition. Like if we had factories where a farmer has a choice, nitapeleka soko ama nipeleka kwa factory. Just imagine of that scenario. Like I'm growing vegetables, but we can dry them. Vegetables are dried for export. Skuma is dried for export. Terere is dried for export. Imagine we've invested in research. We invested in value addition. Value addition is big, Brian. In Kenya, zero on value addition. As we are speaking, they don't care. There's no money in value addition because you put money in value addition, the farmer makes the money. So our priorities are misplaced. Every person in government, bureaucrats in government, their work is to establish as much red tape as possible to maximize on corruption. Actually, that is what corruption nowadays is institutionalized in Kenya. Like, actually, corruption is in law now. Literally, is legal. Corruption is legal. Those nice things that we call, what do we call them? You know, that nice political names we call facilitation fees. It's corruption, you know. Quality check control, corruption, you know. Because you just want to make things so hard for this from, apana, hizo avocados export mi silimi. Because they're making losses. You saw earlier in the year, a lot of farmers cut down their macadamia trees. You know how long a macadamia tree takes to grow? Export market cut. So, and wewe miti zako, you've just had your farm with trees for export. Then all of a sudden you can't export. You could get macadamias on the streets with 100 boba pack. They were meant for export, you know. So when our solutions are there, but we are not keen on these solutions. Our solutions is not in the bills. It's not in the bills in parliament. Our solutions are not in GMOs. Our solutions is making farming attractive, supporting the farmer. If you go to Europe, they really support farming. The farmer is the most subsidized industry when you go to Europe. We don't do those things. You know, we don't do, it's Kibaki who tried by bringing pikipiki zero rated. If you go to tractors importing, taxes. Everything taxes, you know. Then it becomes too expensive. And then unfair market. The Kenyan farmer cannot compete with the Tanzanian farmer. But you know, Kenya is part of the East African trade bloc. Sindio? Mtanzania ata produce kitunguu a kg at Kenya shillings, 15 shillings. Production cost, 15 shillings per kg. You should go to Marigiti at 3 in the morning and you see trailers zile za miguu 10 from Tanzania. Tons and tons of onion. Do you know how much that onion is going to cost at Marigiti? 35 shillings per kg. A farmer in Nakuru, Gilgil, growing onions, their production cost is 50 bob per kg. Production cost. So the best they can get in the market, my goodness, 70, which is very hard. And remember, Marigiti hapa imeuzwa 35 bob. Can they compete? So we signed ourselves into treaties that kill our farming industry. We've signed ourselves in treaties that do not factor a Kenyan. You know, so we have solutions, but I don't know if we can embrace those solutions as the Kenyan people.
Yeah, and that's why we need Okia to win the presidency, to have you the agricultural docket. So yeah, it's very interesting because I also saw you during the Gen Z protest. You were very active into the protests. So I think from the whole shenanigans, we got to learn a lot as Kenyans, and it just showed us what we can do when we sort of unite together based on ideas, based on something that we really think is not right. So we were literally partyless, right? Tribeless, leaderless. But I think we sort of shook the establishment, the government, in terms of how it needs to run its affairs. So what was your take? What was your takeaway?
I went for all the protests. I think it's one time I felt the most proud being a Kenyan. I know in my car, you know the flags we used to use, because they used to tell us dress in black, come with a flag and a Colgate. So even today, I've tied the flag in the car, and it's such a memory. You know, like I really felt proud being a Kenyan. We never thought we'd find ourselves in this situation. You know, we never thought we were going to be activists. I think every Kenyan turned to be an activist, you know. I think this regime has pushed Kenyans to the corner. You know, Kenyans are very peaceful people. By the way, they are very patient people. Kenyans will take as much nonsense as possible, but I think now this was just too much. The finance bill, of course, touched the pocket. You know, when you touch people's pockets, oh, that's something. For me, I felt proud as a Kenyan. Like for the first time, I felt a Kenyan. Okay, I feel a Kenyan when Kenyans are running. You know, like when Kipchoge is winning, you feel so Kenyan. So this time, I felt like that. You know, like I was really a Kenyan. You know, we are fighting for something. We came together. You know, for first time. Let's not even talk about saying we were tribeless. We actually felt it. You actually felt you're a Kenyan. You actually didn't have a tribe. I made so many friends in the streets. Even today, we are friends, you know. People that we could share scarves. You know, we could hide each other in the buildings when tear gas was too much. We became a family, you know. And that's a moment I felt really a Kenyan. And I think we were very successful. I demonstrated. And let me shock you, in this process of demonstration, when the running was too much, the tear gas was too much, you would sit on the, those aisles, not the streets, those aisles that connect the streets, where people have their shoes polished. And we would sit, like 3 places or 4 places, and we chap a story, hey, your tear gas, hey, your ilikuwa pink sijui. And in one of those instances, I was chapping stories to some 2 guys next to me and said, hey, these gavas really sukumadas, can't they just listen, and we gas, and the tear gas is thrown, they ask me for the Colgate, and you share the Colgate, and we sat there like for an hour, actually just next to Nation Center, we sat there for an hour. And then when they just woke up and left, and I was left there seated, the shoe guy was there, and then he said, hey, unajua ulikuwa unachapa story na NIS. And I was like, what? And I was like, maybe even them, they are feeling Kenyan. Then they're just feeling Kenyan. So we were so united. By then, let me tell you, we were sharing those Colgates with even the police. Even the police themselves, watarusha tiagas tukipatana kwa kona shika kidogo, tumaji nini. We were so Kenyan. And let me tell you, Brian, the seed that was sown in May, June, we've never had that in this country. That seed was sown. And once you sow a seed, the only thing that the seed can do is grow. The successes of the Gen Z demonstration, of course, the falling, the withdrawal of the Finance Bill 2024, actually that's not the win. It is a seed that was sown in this country by that demonstration. We are reaping even today, and we are going to reap in so many years. We are going to reap the benefits. Because I say the blood that was poured is actually an ingredient of the seed that was sown. It never goes in vain. It will never go in vain. It will never. Even in another 100 years, it will never go in vain. It is sad that we lost people. I was stuck huku nyuma because I didn't want to die. I didn't want to break my leg. I'm way older than the Gen Z, but I was there with them like crazy. I was there. We tried to penetrate to Parliament. I didn't get to Parliament, but just close to Parliament. And I could see these young people are very different from my generation. By the way, the Gen Z, I learned a lot of things from them. They pulled me from a cocoon. And I would think even this confidence I have today to speak, it was planted then. Because I realized someone has to speak. Someone has to do something. The thing I learned from the Gen Z is, watch a woga. Do something. You want to do something? Just go ahead and do it. Stop thinking about people say, don't be afraid. We live once. Just do it. Do it well. At the end of the day, it's either you do it or you don't. So you'd rather be in the population or the people that do it. And we are reaping until now. See now, we called ourselves tribeless. And my candidate, Okia Omtata, was actually a Gen Z hero. They didn't even think he would, he's a hero because he fights for Kenyans, and he's really fought for Kenyans. When you listen to Okia's story, you're like, actually, when you sit with him, you're shocked. He tells you the 999 toll line, the free line toll number, had actually been withdrawn by the government. He went to court, it was restored. He tells you Kenya National Theatre was being grabbed by Moi. Moi alikuwa amemwaga mpaka mchanga na mawe. He chained himself in that building, demonstrated. KNT, we still have it today. We know the victories. This is a juicy. He's actually the one who made sure that he went to court and the Finance Bill 2023 was withdrawn, though it was restored by the Supreme Court. But that is his victory. He went to case on small things like Butere girls not being allowed to go for a national festival. Yeah, he fights for people. Where there is an injustice, he fights for people. So the Gen Z identified with him because he's a fighter for the people. And the Gen Z want nothing to do with corruption. They didn't want anything to do with things like what? They didn't want to do inefficiency, tribalism. Ndio tulikuwa tunasema tuko tribeless. And let me tell you, anyone who underestimates the Gen Z in the coming election 2027 is foolish. They are going to be a force to reckon with. So, to me, but there were lessons. That demonstrations were lessons for me. I participated, but I learned a lot as a person.
Yeah, I think it was a wake-up lesson, actually, for everybody. And especially the political class, because they always knew they could, every single protest that happened before then, they can always pin to someone. They could say, huyo ni wase wa ODM, ama ni wa Raila. But this time they couldn't pin a leader.
Hata wale watu walikuwa nashikwa walikuwa naulizwa nani anawafund? I'm like, these people are thick. No one is funding these people. They are funded by their own convictions,
Desires to have a better leadership for the country. And, speaking out the way you speak on these issues can be, I think, challenging. And especially for you, I mean, you're putting yourself out there in terms of being a target. So someone can pin out, hey, this lady was talking about these bills and this kind of things. We've seen her, being really vocal about the government. So what do you think is your motivation into doing this? What keeps you going?
I will tell you, there's a video I did on TikTok that went viral. That video really ilichangia sana Gen Z. It went very viral. I think it's like it's a 300 to 500 views. Way before, in May, it was still about the Finance Bill 2024. And sometimes you feel like, no, you have to do something. You have to do something. And in my heart, I felt I had to do something. But let me tell you, I was so scared. At some point, you get a lot of feedback, positive and negative feedback. There's a week I didn't leave my home. I was like, oh my God, okay, they're coming for me. Wacha nicheze chini 1 week, But let me tell you something. You sit down and analyze. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. They are coming for us whichever way. So even though you sit and say, okay, I don't want trouble, they'll still come for you. Because what are they doing now? When they come for your food, when they come for education, they come for your health. They're coming for you whichever way. So I sat down, and of course I've told you, I borrowed a lot from the young people, the Gen Z. Wow, you, this generation, mlisema sijui mnagopanga mimba na nini? Mimba na moto. I was like, shit. These people are so... I borrowed a lot from that. And I thought, because I have a lot of information, I have a lot of content, I have a lot of things that I can help humanity. Let me just give people out here. You see, I don't force it on people. I just give this information. It's upon you to believe or not to believe. And I tell people, go and research. Once I say something, I tell people, go and do your own research. I could be wrong. But most of the time when people do their research, they're like, oh, it was true. So I gain a lot of... And then I realize I have children. What kind of a world am I going to leave my children with? At least even when I'm old, one day I should say, nilijaribu. I tried to have a better future for my children. And then hakuna mtu ataishi hapa forever. We are all going, whichever way. We are all going. You could go at 70, 80, you will go. So for the period that we are here, I want to do my best. More so for humanity. We are not paid for these things, Brian. Actually, we put our money in these things. So we just do this for humanity and to help the people.
Yeah, and to do such a kind of a job, you have to have like a conviction, a certain kind of conviction that what you're doing is actually the right thing. Because, yeah, I mean, if you go online, I'm sure that you've got a lot of backlash, especially online. Someone can come with a comment and say, you're just cloud chasing, or you don't know what you're talking about. But for you to continue speaking about these issues, you have to have that conviction, and it's not something comes by or can be bought. Yeah, so I'm really, really looking forward to following you in that front. So this is a part of the podcast where I've called it rapid fire questions. So what I've done is I prepared 10 questions for you. So the idea behind it is just I'll throw a question to you, and you give me a quick fire answer to the questions. So you ready for the questions?
Okay.
So the first question is, what was the first career you dreamt of having as a kid?
A lawyer.
Second question, if you had to eat only one meal for the rest of your life, what will it be?
One meal for the rest of my life? Chapati.
So the third question, when you're not working, how do you like to spend your time?
Working or the gym.
The fourth question, what are you afraid of most?
Losing myself. In the process of anything in life, I don't want to lose myself.
Okay, so the fifth question, where is one place you like to go that you haven't been?
Seychelles.
Sixth question, what's your favorite book?
The Bible.
Seventh question, if you could invite 3 people, dead or alive, into a party, who would they be? My
firstborn daughter, my mom, and one of my enemies. I don't know who they are, just one.
The eighth question, what was something you've done that made you extremely happy?
My kids. I think Being called mom, I think, is the most beautiful name. I don't know why. For me, it's so sweet.
The ninth question, what quote resonates with you most?
Be kind in life, even though it's just you who is kind in the entire world. Just be kind. Even though you're the only one who is kind, just be kind.
The last question, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Don't rush into societal settings. Don't rush to what you're programmed by society in general. Don't rush. Just get to know yourself. Just get to know you. Don't rush into marriage. Don't rush into anything. Just get to know yourself, who you are as a person.
Okay. Yeah, that's powerful. So thank you very much for creating time for this podcast. I think a lot of guys who will be watching this will find it very insightful, very educational. So how can guys maybe want to know more about you? Where can they find you?
You could, my Twitter handle, you could put it on the screen. You get me on Twitter, you get me on TikTok. My number too, because I'm the convener of Kilimo Cha Haki. And in Kilimo Cha Haki, we lobby for good policies in agriculture. Not just the bills only, there's so much work to be done in agriculture. We want to go to court against GMOs. We just want to fight for our food sovereignty and our food security. So you could also share my number with the viewers. They could reach out to me and see where they can plug in, because it's not a one-person fight. It's all of us that we come together and just for a better future for this country.
And I'm sure they'll be interested also to follow your work with the Senate.
Exactly. I'm now the chair lady of the exploratory committee of Okia Omtata presidential bid. We are very busy on that front too, because we realize that you cannot implement policies when you're not in politics. So come to politics because they affect you every single day. So we are in politics because we want to implement good policies for the country, and we are working very hard to make sure that we take the highest seat in the country.
Looking forward to that. I mean, highly recommend you follow on especially on Twitter. That's X. Very, very informative posts. So thank you very much for your time. Till the next podcast, remember to be organic. Cheers.